Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, Tacitus today, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the role of central banks. Now, every Western nation has, the equivalent, if you like, of the Fed, or the approximation of the Fed. A central bank that's supposed to be politically independent or independent of political influence, which is hardly ever the case in reality. But nonetheless, they're now, given the inflationary pressures, caused initially by all the handouts and bailouts during the quite unnecessary and very destructive COVID lockdowns, and then the artificially created energy shortages, which have fed into the inflationary pressures, which in turn have resulted in the central banks putting up the interest rates. Now we've seen just inflation on food. There's hardly a food item that hasn't gone up by at least 30%. Many have gone up by 50, and there's plenty of food items have doubled. Just one piece in Australia, which has got a huge surplus of beef, by the way. In Australia, the just one half pound, 250 gram size steak, some of the better cuts, you're paying nearly $30 for those. These are now, if you want to go back and look at supermarket food advertising in newspapers of, say, the mid-70s, you could buy that same cut of steak for less than $1 and slightly larger at that. So you're looking at inflation of 30 times, more than 30 times in there, whilst incomes have gone up by a third of that amount. So that sort of will illustrate, I guess, just the overall inflation there. Loaves of bread that were $3 a year and a half ago are now, $4.50. This is Australian dollars I'm talking about here. Milk that was $2.10 is now $3.20. The list just goes on. Some of them are like, especially products that have any sort of sugar in them. And again, Australia is a huge supplier of sugar and a mass exporter of sugar. Say something like jam or marmalade, those sorts of things. They've more than doubled now. So a $3.50 jar of jam is now $7.20, and that sort of thing. So now, the thing with the inflation is how uniform it is around the world. So in a country like Britain, where there's no sugar, or certainly nothing like the quantity of sugar that's produced in Australia, vast sugarcane fields in Australia. It's not only all domestic consumption can be met, but there's quite a huge surplus for export as well. And yet the inflation rate between a country that has no sugar and has to import it, and a country that has vast amounts of sugar and is exporting it, the inflation rate of the sugar products is exactly the same. Now, I just don't buy that. That means the inflation is internationally coordinated. That you don't get exactly the same outcome in countries that have a completely different economic structure in terms of production and distribution and so on. But instead, what's happening is we're getting exactly the same level of inflation. So, as in, just slightly over doubling of the prices. So clearly we're looking at nothing organic here. There's no market forces at work. This is all orchestrated and stage managed and so on. But listening to the central bankers, they're all reading from the same script. Well, what's the cause of inflation? Putin did it. Putin, that's it. Putin's fault. Well, what about the increase in energy prices due to that Nord Stream pipeline? Putin did that too. Well, what about Putin? No one's to blame. We're not to blame. Government COVID policy is not to blame. That was the right thing to do by just and good people. And if you've got a problem with that, you damn fucking fat. In fact, if you disagree, you are Hitler. You are fucking Hitler. So the COVID, there's nothing wrong with the COVID policy. That was the perfect response in its timing and its scale. The bailouts that were, or not the bailouts, the payments for people to sit at home, that was fine and dandy. Nothing wrong with that. But isn't putting a lot of money into the system without some corresponding and offsetting productivity, isn't that inflation? No. Policy settings were perfect. Nothing wrong with that at all. Well, what's the cause of the Putin's the cause? No. All right. Now, all the globalists, all these central bankers are all reading from the same script. It just happens to accord fully with the globalist script. So there can be no doubt that the globalists control all the central banks, and right down to the scripting of the fucking speeches they make. That's the level of control the globalist cabal has of the central bankers. So we have no independence in our legal system, political system, or judicial system anymore. The globalists control, or the media, the globalists control the fucking lot. Now, let's just have a look at some of the details that these people these central bankers are putting forward. They're constantly saying that one of the key inflation, other than Putin, one of the key inflationary measures or key inflationary influences at the moment is that the labour market is so tight. There's just a shortage of workers. Businesses just cannot get workers. There's no workers around. There are millions of jobs and just no one to fill it. Well, hold on. Over 1 million people came into Britain last year, and 250, 300,000 into Australia and millions into Canada and so on. And so are you saying in spite of all these people coming, in spite of the retirement age being delayed, in spite of that, there are still a shortage of workers? Yes, there's just no businesses can't get workers. No, we have to increase mass migration so it's mass migration. That's the only solution. And all these central bankers are pretty much saying the same thing word for word. So again, it's obviously centrally scripted. Now, let's just have a look at this so-called worker shortage. Now there's a factory, I don't know, 10 miles down the road from where I happen to know one of the owners of the factory, and they do complain that it's hard to get workers, but they will not pay 1 cent above the minimum wage. Not 1 cent will they pay above it. So my in a market-driven economy, and we're supposed to still be capitalist, as far as I'm aware anyway, if you can't get workers, then you improve the conditions in some way. You pay more money, or you have a canteen where they can have, you supply breakfast and lunch or something. You can do things to attract the workers, make the job more attractive, make the conditions more attractive, make the income more attractive. But they absolutely refuse. Why should I have to do it? The fact that somebody who'd otherwise work in the factory can get a job, say at the local, cafe or something like that, and with their tips make more money and have better hours and conditions and more congenial working circumstances. Why, rather than in a dirty factory, why don't we force the cafe owners to pay their people less, and then that in turn will force those workers back into the factory? Do you believe in capitalism? Well, how about someone comes along, controls the prices you can sell your goods at, and says you have to sell for 20% cheaper? What about, no, that's not allowed. I want a market economy when it suits me. I just don't want to have a market economy when it doesn't suit me, and this doesn't suit me. So that's and they just won't pay a penny more. And I've tried, in various, not just to this guy, but others, I've tried sort of to say, well, look, why don't you try just offering? You say that you can't get workers and you have to advertise for weeks at a time, and half the people that turn up are mentally retarded in any way, or can't speak a lick of English. So, why don't you try and improve the conditions? And again, it doesn't have to be salary; it can be something else, like a staff amenities, employee amenities that are generous, and it's all tax deductible stuff. It's not like it's a direct hit onto their bottom line, or it has an implication for the bottom line, of course, but it is tax deductible as a cost of business. So, but they won't have it. At the same time, the guy complains that the new Merc he's ordered is is going to be delivered late because of supply chain issues. So this cherry picking the capitalist economy, I want the capitalist economy to exist here, but not there, or there. And I shake my head sometimes in disbelief. But coming back to these the bankers and the central script, the claim, the universal claim is there is a labour shortage all across the Western world, and only mass migration from third world peasant economies can fix it. Nothing else is going to fix it, only that. Now, there just happens to be the globalist propaganda line as well, so we can safely dismiss that as having any credibility at all. Now, another thing that the bankers are mentioning is that Western people are retiring earlier, and so there should be intervention by the government to prevent people from accessing, pensions or retirement savings or superannuation retirement plan type savings, to delay that, which forces them back into the workforce for longer. Now, in a lot of countries, Australia included, I think the retirement age is now 66 or maybe even 67. Or the day you turn 67, you can retire. Now, the retirement age has gone up. You could access the pension in the 1980s at the age of 55. But now it's 67, so it's increased 12 years. And they're talking about adding another year on for people who today would be in their mid-40s, I guess. And there's talk about actually gradually increasing the pension age to 70. So people will have to work longer if they're to. Now, the argument that the banks put is this very spurious argument that's the globalist bandy about left, right, and centre, where as your workforce, the total number of people working shrinks, that the whole nation becomes poorer. Now, that is an outrageous fucking lie. People can be more productive through increased mechanisation or robotisation. So this idea that a smaller workforce automatically guarantees poverty is bullshit. And wherever you hear it, dismiss it out of hand. Again, there's all sorts of organisational efficiencies. Get rid of diversity, equity, inclusion departments. Make sure that everyone that comes to the West speaks the language and has skills. The skills that can be used in the economy. There's all sorts of things can be done. So this idea again that a contracting workforce means a poverty and productivity declines and this sort of thing. It could mean a consumption decline in certain areas, but if people are more productive, then the relative cost of their or the relative purchasing power of their income would increase relative to the available goods and services. They could, there's things could be done, reduce the price of real estate so people can afford rents. There's just a vast array of things can be done, but that's a lie, and it's just to suit the globalist agenda and nothing more. But it did become apparent looking at all the speeches of these central bankers just how much they're controlled by the globalists, down to the point again that the globalists are actually writing their speeches, say this. And of course it's happening. You've been in Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.